Beneath the Willow Tree. There was a quiet town nestled in the English countryside, where time seemed to slow and every sunset painted the sky with whispers of poetry. In that town lived a young woman named Alara, a librarian with a heart full of stories and a gaze that always looked just beyond the horizon. She lived alone in a quaint cottage filled with books, wildflowers, and the gentle aroma of tea. Every afternoon, Alara would walk down to the lake that mirrored the sky. A great willow tree stood there, its branches trailing the water like fingers lost in thought. It was her place of peace, until one summer afternoon, it became the place where her life changed. That day, she found someone already sitting beneath the willow. A man, perhaps in his early 30s, sketching the lake with an old graphite pencil. He had the look of someone who had wandered far and carried stories in his silence. "Sorry," Alara said, startled. "I didn't mean to interrupt." He looked up and smiled. A quiet, kind smile that reached his eyes. "It's not interrupting if you belong here." They shared the shade that day, and many days after. His name was Aidan, an artist from the city, escaping the noise in search of something quieter, something real. Their conversations began with books and art, meandered into philosophy and dreams, and eventually found their way into shared laughter and long silences that didn't need filling. Seasons turned like pages. In autumn, they gathered leaves and pressed them between pages of her journals. In winter, they built fires and read poetry aloud, their voices soft against the sound of rain. In spring, he painted her under the willow, the wind catching her hair like a dance. They never needed grand declarations. Love, for them, was found in the small things, how he always remembered how she took her tea, or how she left notes in his sketchbook for him to find when she wasn't around. But love, like seasons, can be uncertain. One rainy morning, Aidan received a letter, an offer to showcase his work in a gallery in New York. It was everything he had once dreamed of. He looked at her with hesitation in his eyes. "You should go," Alara said, her voice steady but her fingers trembling around her cup. "You deserve it." "And what about us?" he asked. "We've never needed a place to define us," she whispered. "But I won't ask you to stay, not if it means losing a part of yourself." He left in the spring. The willow tree stood silent for a long time. So did Alara. She still visited, still wrote, still dreamed, but with a quiet ache that only comes from a love too deep to forget. Years passed. She never stopped believing he might return. And one autumn morning, as the leaves turned gold and the lake shimmered in the mist, she found him there, under the willow, older, his eyes still carrying that same quiet fire. "I found everything I was looking for," he said. "But none of it meant anything without you." And as the willow branches swayed around them, Alara stepped into his arms, knowing some love stories aren't meant to end, only to pause, until the right page turns again.
A Love Beyond Words. Once upon a time in a quiet seaside town, there lived a girl named Emma and a boy named Leo. They met every morning at the same coffee shop, always sitting at separate tables, stealing glances but never speaking. One rainy day, Emma forgot her umbrella. As she stood by the door, unsure, Leo silently walked over and handed her his. She smiled, and in that moment, something changed. The next day, there was a note under her cup. Sometimes love doesn't need words. It was signed with a heart. From that day on, they sat together, shared coffee, and built a quiet love, one written not in words, but in gestures, smiles, and time.